Welcome to the Privy. I am Courtney, sitting here today with a new guest. I just met him, a couple weeks ago. Last week, if you remember on the episode, I mentioned the queer flea market, which should be the Brooklyn Queer Flea Market. And I am sitting here with the founder today, Mr. Ron Sese. Did I do that correctly?
You sure did. Hey, what up, BK?
How are you? Now, are you from Brooklyn originally?
No, not at all.
Where are you from?
I'm an LA kid. I grew up in California.
Did we talk about that before?
I don't think we did.
I used to live in LA. I lived in LA for 7 years.
Where about?
I lived in Marina Del Rey for the first 3 years, and then the last 3 to 4 I lived in downtown LA.
Cool.
Yes, very, very cool. It's very different than what it was when I lived there, though. That was some time ago. What part are you from?
So I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay.
But I'm the product of divorce. What's up, trauma? And my dad also actually lived in Torrance, which is like a neighboring city to Marina Del Rey.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a nice weekend getaway to the beach cities, which was cool.
What brought you out to New York?
I was originally working for a queer television channel that's based out here.
Okay.
And I was working remotely from California for a while, but upward mobility was an issue, so I had to physically be here in order to do more.
Okay. So you mentioned you work for a queer television station. The flea market is the Brooklyn Queer Flea Market, and I know you identify yourself as queer as
Correct.
opposed to gay. Can you explain that to the listeners, what that means? Because I feel like that term is such a powerful term, but I feel like it changes from person to person, even within the LGBTQ community. I kind of see it now as like an umbrella to all the LGBT, basically.
Sure.
But explain that to me. Explain
Absolutely. No, it's I do see it treated as that umbrella a lot, which I'm here for. I think that it should sort of serve as that umbrella label. The term has evolved since I've identified with it.
Okay.
Also, and so the meaning also has sort of expanded.
Yeah.
I started identifying as queer in 2006.
Okay.
My sister was really political, and so I was 18, fresh out of high school, and
Okay.
feeling very political, feeling my political oats.
Yes.
I was going to college, and all of the imagery surrounding gayness at the time was purely around queer as folk and the images presented on Will and Grace.
Got it. Which we talk about a lot on this podcast about the media representation of us and lack thereof. But go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. And as somebody who is I am a man who has sex with men, but I'm also I am also a man of color. I am also while I may not always express my gender as fluid, I am someone who will accept all pronouns. I'm someone who feels very much day to day my masculine representation and my feminine representation is dependent on that mood and that moment.
Right.
I don't feel locked into a specific image. But initially I identified as queer because I just didn't feel like there was representation for people like me under the term gay.
Got it.
And I didn't there was a need to distance myself from the Jacks of Will and Grace of the world, which is what sort of the caricature was at the time of what a gay man was. Then a little show called Noah's Ark happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Noah's Ark was my one refuge in queer media. It was the one time I saw people that they didn't necessarily look exactly like me, but they were folks who I understood the narrative. I understood where they came from. I understood
the experience. You connected with it.
Sure, yeah. It also took place in LA. It just felt like home. It felt like watching home.
Right.
And so since then, I've always sort of been political and always felt very much like queer was the identity that made the most sense for me.
Okay.
I will occasionally on social media and stuff like that allow gay to be used interchangeably with that. For me, just because I understand that I am a cisgendered male.
Yeah.
And I am somebody who is male presenting, and so that privilege exists, and that I'll give that freedom to other people if they'd want to identify me as gay, but my personal preference is queer.
Okay.
And it's strictly it strictly was initially because of like that image and wanting to distance myself from it. Now queer means so many other things, right? Because queer, when I was initially using it, was directly tied to sexuality. Now it also like is a manifestation of gender, and all of that stuff. And so I actually got into a really interesting debate with someone about whether or not I was allowed to identify as queer.
Really?
Well, because in the queer spectrum, I occupy a very, very like mask space, right? Like I present very male.
Yeah.
And there are people who have a much harder time who identify with queer,
right?
Based on their presentation, and so there's almost a need to measure one another, which I don't understand, and I also
I don't understand it either. I mean, even with talking about queer, and today, even on like our social media and things like queer, and we did an episode on the term faggot and all these terms that have kind of been reclaimed. It's still, I'm not always black. Like I can't always explain it to someone who even asked me, because it is always evolving, and it's all people's perspective is just so different of the thing. I'm surprised that someone would get in a heated debate with you trying to just measure it into like, that's just so confusing to me. It's just like such a
I mean, it is what it is. There are a lot of opinions. The queer community right now is feeling particularly galvanized, and occupying any amount of privilege, I think it's easy to like reduce someone to that, right? And then to like write them off because of it.
Right.
But it's always been a mission of mine to create space and to create opportunities for visibility.
Got it.
And I very much have advocated for queerness for 12 years. I've advocated for queerness since before a lot of people accepted queer.
Right.
When I worked at that television channel,
Right.
people there didn't feel comfortable with me using the word queer.
Oh, wow.
And I was challenged a lot.
Yeah.
Based on that, and there was a lot of discussion and internal arguments and debates about like whether or not like we should expand the LGBT, which what it was at the time, to the LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
And I stood by that, and I'm proud I stood by that.
Yeah.
And I think in large part that's how we get to a space like today. I'm not crediting myself with everything, but I'm saying that like I played a part in that.
Right.
I advocated for it, and I think that we all should.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have very similar paths, although they may not be identical paths. We all have that similar path, and I think we should all like exude a sense of empathy for each other, whether you consider yourself queer, gay, bisexual, transgender, pansexual, what have you. Like we all have a similar kind of like exactly similar like coming out situation, oppression, and all those things are wanting to fit into a larger society, I guess you would say.
Sure.
Now, you just mentioned wanting to your mission was to create spaces. So I want to get into the Brooklyn Brooklyn Queer Flea Market. I just want to, whatever. So the Brooklyn Queer Flea Market, you started that how long ago?
It started in February 2018. Okay. So it's relatively new.
Yes.
We're a very young flea, but we're growing really rapidly, and I'm really excited about like where we've come to.
Yeah. Did you envision it the way it is? And by that I mean, there's a really good sense of energy when you go in there. Like everyone is super cool, nice, friendly. It's like a really cool, positive environment. Like, is that what you envision, or it just kind of naturally came to that?
That was very deliberate.
Yeah.
That was a hope.
Mm-hmm.
They're creating spaces and creating events and doing these sorts of endeavors. I think people will often think of that like effort as they'll look at someone who does that and say like, oh, you're a promoter.
Mm-hmm.
And like beyond promotion, there's a design element to this. Like you have to go in with a vision, go in with a narrative for what's happening, right. And you sort of like create that narrative and translate that to the audience.
Right.
The promotion end of like doing these sorts of events is actually my least favorite thing.
Right.
It has nothing to do with why I do it.
Right.
What I'm hoping to create here is an opportunity to curate an experience.
Yeah.
And that was always sort of the intention. We want the space that it's held in, the Rosemont, for anyone who hasn't been, I also work there. Come through on a Saturday night. It's poppin'. Hey. But it's also sort of lends itself to as like a community queer space, and it doesn't shy away from like making sure that everyone feels welcome.
Exactly.
Right? Like there's a really deliberate effort there.
Yeah.
And so when we were designing the Queer Flea, it just made a ton of sense that we sort of carry on that narrative.
Right.
It was always about like access, and that was a large part of it. The Brooklyn queer community is relatively small. There are a lot of creatives in it, and we all know each other.
Yeah.
We're all friends.
Yeah.
And so I had already wanted to do a flea market. I had already wanted to do something similar to that because I knew all these people who exclusively sold merch online, who had relatively large followings, and it just like it didn't make sense that there wasn't a store space where they could like where you could physically try on the items and like hang out and talk to the creators. And so through the winter, times were really actually hard on a lot of the bars in Brooklyn. I don't know why I said that like that would be a surprise. It's snowing out, obviously.
Ain't nobody coming out.
But there was a lot of concern around like what can we do to motivate foot traffic on like a daytime during the weekend. And I pitched this idea and it worked. And we've been really fortunate.
Yeah. No, what to someone who doesn't know or can't put two and two together, what is the Brooklyn Queer Flea Market?
Sure. So the mission behind it is to create a space where queer creatives can showcase their talent in a space that is like accessible, and also in a space that like sort of exists already as a hub for the fans.
Yeah.
And the Rosemont has definitely like positioned itself to be that in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's where all the best parties are. It's a lot. It's a really good time.
Yeah, I need to go because I still have not been. But like I think I told you this before, I have plenty of friends that go to the Rosemont who don't even know each other, but all, as you said, are very creative.
Yeah.
And they go, and I was like, I've never been to. That was my first time going to the Rosemont in the daytime. Definitely not what I envisioned because it seems so much bigger when you see it on everyone's Instagram. You think of this like massive place because there's always a performance going on, and I'm like, where are they doing these performances? And I was like, where is all of this going down at? Tell me.
It is not the biggest space in the world. It is,
but it's cute and it has so much character, and the outdoor space is amazing, which I love.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. For what it is, it's bigger than you can imagine. But but for what it is, it's actually not very big at all. Come this Saturday, I'll take care of you.
Yeah,
really cute.
Oh my God, I have to come. Now, were you influenced? Like now that I know you are from Southern California, were you influenced by any like flea market? Was that something you did a lot growing up?
Are you kidding me? The indoor swap meet was like my judge. Are you kidding me?
Listen, I love a flea market. I love it. I am from the South, so I'm from North Carolina, and so we do flea markets like every weekend. And then when I moved to LA, similar thing. Like Pasadena was once a month. We would go to the Melrose Trading Post. Like it's always about a flea market. And so even when I found out about it, I was like, oh my God, how cool! Because you never even think about something like that. I was looking up. In LA, there is actually a vegan queer flea market. Do you know about that?
No.
Yeah, it's a vegan queer, which is so interesting. I couldn't find a lot of information on it.
Hold on, calling my lawyer.
But I think they have it, like, I think somewhere downtown. But what kind of response have you gotten from the start, like 3 months ago, of the Brooklyn Queer Flea?
I don't know that there wasn't, like, I don't know that there was a response at all. I mean, I think most people just sort of were reluctant. I don't think that they saw the vision the way I saw the vision. And that's not unfounded. There's nothing like it right now in the queer space in Brooklyn.
Right.
There are similar sort of endeavors where like people will do pop-up shops, but
I was going to say like a one-off, a major event where they'll support, but not a continuous.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also like in the summer months, there's this really great party at the Rosemont called Tan Lines that has done flea markets along with a party. Before, but it was seasonal and it just like wasn't year round, and we needed more. We needed a sort of a larger sort of encompassing scope.
Yeah.
Also, every flea has its own personality, and our flea has a very specific like type of artist that it attracts for some reason, and so that's of where we've been leaning.
And what kind of artist is that?
It's been a lot of Well, it's a lot of the initial artists that were involved were friends, like I said, that we knew through social media and sort of just socializing in Brooklyn. And so it's a lot of like illustrators and photographers, whereas other flea markets that I've been to, it's been like I know a really cool one coming up is the drag tag sale that a friend of mine is throwing, and it's all drag merch, and it's all drag apparel that like queens are getting rid of out of their own closet.
Oh wow!
And that's really cool. It's its own concept, but again, it's its own concept. It's separate from what we're doing. It's not. I think there's this idea that like that these flea markets can't all exist together, and they can't,
as they should. Yeah,
they absolutely should. Yeah. There's enough space for all of us. Yeah, and the audiences for them shouldn't be made to choose. Yeah. That might have actually been the second response that we got to your question.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there were a lot of other people who organized things like that who were maybe a little skeptical because they felt like, oh, are you trying to like edge us out of our space? And the truth is, I'm just trying to create more space. I have no interest in edging anyone out of anything.
Right. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned since starting the Brooklyn Queer Flea?
That people love a reason to day drink. And that's the tea.
They do. As I got 2 drinks last weekend. Absolutely. It is the first time, and they buy more. The more you get people liquored up, they will buy. They will buy more.
I also think that the people love alliteration. Yeah. Sip and Shop was, we've been pushing it. We've been trying to get people to listen. Now that the weather's getting nicer, I'm also learning that like people that there are other ways that we can use that space.
Right.
We have some really cool stuff coming up for the May Flea.
Okay.
Stuff that we couldn't have possibly done in February or March.
Awesome.
And so it'll be a really great use of the outdoor space, which like if you haven't been to the Rosemont, the outdoor space is like
amazing.
It's the reason to go.
Yeah,
it's so nice.
Good. She was chilly the other day, so I didn't stay out there too long, but it's really nice.
Absolutely.
Nice space. What was I going to ask you? Okay, so one of the things, it really hit home for me when I went, because I am a firm believer of supporting LGBTQ companies, organizations, and like just really putting means back into our community. How did that play a role in you starting the Brooklyn Flea? And speak to a little bit, and if you even agree with this, how important do you think it is to support LGBTQ organizations financially?
Well, support LGBTQIA plus folk, regardless in any capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
I fully believe that, but also financially.
Yeah,
yes.
I think that's a big part that we are missing in today's. I mean, in today's climate, I think there is a challenge that we are not addressing, and I think we should really hit them in our pockets. And I think we need to band together and really start to kind of just move in that direction. And I've been a firm believer of that. So that's why it felt so good to even come to the Brooklyn Queer Flea, because you just want to buy everything. Take all my coins. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please do. No, please do. You said it beautifully. We have a lot of economic power.
Yeah.
And that is something we need to flex more often.
Yeah.
No one will do better for our community than our community.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important for us to create these spaces. Because if we won't, who will? Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to fight a cold, so you're going to see me. You're going to hear me wheezing. You're going to have to forgive me. But the Flea was very much motivated by the idea that, like, there are all these other people trying to profit off of queerness.
Exactly.
But the real people who maybe should be profiting off of this queerness are queer people.
Yeah, exactly.
And there isn't enough space for us.
Right.
So that was like one motivator. The other thing is that, like, with our current political climate, people, the LGBTQIA plus community is feeling very, very. And this is a blanket statement, but this is my experience, at least here in Brooklyn. Folks are feeling very galvanized. They're feeling like we need to step up. We need to do something. We need to make ourselves known.
Absolutely.
And that's because right now the patriarchy is in full effect.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people flexing power.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying,
Yeah.
I think, to feel not just like we might be unseen or we might be unheard, but we're also like potentially facing very real violence, or like our safe spaces are being taken away from us. And with all of that happening, now more than ever, we need to band together. We need to support our community. We need to support these people who are creating art that challenges the patriarchy, that challenges what most people are looking at as normative, and are reminding people that we're here. Yeah. And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's overt, but like all of it is beautiful. Yeah. And all of it is fierce. Yeah. And those expressions of art need to be celebrated. Right. And that's really like what motivates the Queer Flea. Yeah. And sort of what we hope to be the through line moving forward with the Flea.
Now, I sent you an article from Advocate Magazine. Did you read it?
I did.
Oh, what did you think?
Well, I thought it was powerful. Yeah. Admittedly, it was sort of it underscored a feeling I sort of already had.
Right. Yeah.
So I can't say that it was like maybe the most like mind-blowing concept, but I'm glad to see it put into words.
Yeah. Well, same for me when I read it. So it was by Advocate Magazine by Justin Nelson and Chance Mitchell, January 2nd of this year. So it was much earlier in the year. Well, not much earlier. It's just like 3 or 4 months ago. Wait, what month are we? April. Like, so 4 months ago. Courtney, relax. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. So it starts off talking. So the name of the article. Oh my God, I left that part off. Oh God, I'm terrible. Anyway, look it up, guys. Boom. The LGBT economy is America's future. That is the name of the title. Thank God somebody came prepared today, because I was messy. So one of the points it makes, it kind of intros, we have fought hard to secure our rights in the name of equality, but our true equity and ability to bring about change for our community lies with our economic power. And one of the things that I was a little bit shocked by this. If the total contributed value of the estimated 1.4 million American LGBT business owners is considered, our input to the economy is over 1.7 trillion. That would make LGBT Americans the 10th largest economy in the world. For a little perspective, that's bigger than the economies of Australia, Canada, and South Korea combined. How crazy is that?
It is insane.
I had I knew we had power, but that's a lot. Bigger than Australia, Canada, and South Korea combined.
Yeah, to scale it, or like to offer sort of a reference in that way is shocking. But I mean, did you have any doubts? I knew we had buying power.
1.7 trillion. That's pretty impressive.
I remember in working in television and specifically for queer networks that like when we were doing advertising stuff, that I remember there being a lot of information supporting the fact that like the one of the largest demographics that advertisers want to hit are were gay men, and a lot of that had to do with the expendable income and the sort of freedom of dependence. Right. And so like that tied with this information, that makes complete sense. Of course that there's so much buying power. We also
underestimate ourselves though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think we need to...
I think we're conditioned to do that, though.
That is true. I think that we don't realize that, and we don't really, like, take small and larger steps to, like, come together and really support LGBTQ. Is that IA+? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I realize that I leave that out all the time, and I'm like,
but that's the thing. The acronym is always ever changing, right? Like it's about as fluid as our gender.
Bitch, it's hard for me to remember all these damn letters.
There's a lot to be. There's a lot of folks who need to be acknowledged, which is why that sort of acronym exists. The plus exists just also to acknowledge the sort of grander, the folks that we can't acknowledge yet. Because there isn't the language to put it out there yet. Right. But yeah, no, I mean, queer buying power has always been a thing. Yeah. It's something that we need to harness more often. Yeah. I am a part of an activist group, and this activist group is really dope. What's up, Voices 4?
Ooh, number 4. Voices number 4, guys. We talked about that last week, too.
You follow us on Instagram, Voices4_. And we're relatively new, but we've been blowing up.
Yeah. Go ahead. Get it. It's fine. There's tissues right behind. Oh, this has never been done. Get the tissue. You can get the tissue.
We're on air.
Okay, whatever. Calm down. Anyway, go
ahead. But so Voices for is a direct action activist group here in New York City, and we used to meet at Taco Bell after every meeting.
Shut up.
We did, and this was why. We wanted to find a place nearby where we were meeting that was accessible by walking. That had food options on the menu that anyone could have. So, like, if you were vegan, if you had dietary restrictions, like, there was something on the menu that you could get. Okay. And it had to be relatively low cost because we wanted to make sure that we were accessible to everyone.
Got it.
And that's what we would meet there to do what we called community building, which was just us kikiing after the meeting, just hanging out, enjoying one another, trying to build relationships. But we had to stop going. Wow. And we had to stop going because we found out Taco Bell doesn't offer their trans employees adequate coverage, adequate medical coverage.
Wow.
And so that's not necessarily, like, we're not out here to start a smear campaign, but we are, there is some value in acknowledging, like, our money shouldn't be going to these places that aren't supporting our people.
I love that. I think a lot of times we don't know about things, like, we don't know, like, for instance, I also sent this to you about the Coachella. One of the founders supported an anti-LGBTQ campaign.
100%.
And Cara Delevingne was the one who actually put it, like, to the media. But, like, just imagine the many queer LGBTQIA plus people who went to Coachella and how much money they're getting. And I'm like, oh, no, I can never go to Coachella again.
I have so many friends.
Absolutely not.
I have so many friends who went and then, like, were promoting it like crazy on Instagram and all of that stuff, which, like, do you live your best life? Like, I'm not here to tell you what you should be doing.
I'm a shade it, though. No. I'm a shade you,
do that. But I don't. I say, like, you do what's best for you. Mm-hmm. I would personally want to support them financially or by promoting them.
Right.
And that's just my personal feeling. The world shook when Beychella happened.
Yeah.
I unfortunately still haven't seen it. And I probably won't. And a lot of that has to do with just not. I love Beyonce. I love her.
When I listen, I did see it because it was
and by all means, like, no, and again, that's you. You're welcome to do that.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'd rather see it live on tour.
Yeah.
I'll see that later.
Yeah.
I don't need to see it now.
I love that. Now, how do you go about making people see the importance of it? Because I think it's one thing to say and for us to make our own decisions, whether we support it or not. But how do you make people see the importance of, like, what you are doing to either support them or what you are doing by ignoring, like, these facts or choosing to kind of look away from things like that? Like, how do we make people see how important that is for us?
I think apathy is easy.
Yeah.
And I think people will... I think the idea of $1 meaning anything to anyone, I feel like that's... I feel like most people don't think $1 is going to make a difference. Every dollar will make a difference. This is not to say that I'm like... that I've, never been seen at a Taco Bell. Oh. I've never scarfed down a chalupa.
Absolutely, because I have probably had Chick-fil-A in the past 5 years, and I've known better. But yeah, absolutely.
But that doesn't mean what I was doing is reflective of where my feelings are now, and it's never too late to make a concerted effort.
Right.
Just because you have supported somebody who might not be supportive of your community doesn't mean you have to continue to do that.
Right.
And I think it's important to remind people that there isn't any sort of contract to make you brand loyal. You can figure out what's best for you. There's a million products in the world there's a million companies in the world offering you the same products. You can find one that works for you that is ethical. And the HRC has a really great resource for that.
Yeah.
And so if you're ever in a bind and you're curious about this, make sure you go to the HRC and you find out how they how companies you're interested in scale on their ethical.
Yeah. Something else that I have not done either. Something that the advocate article actually taught me is that you can look at the LGBT Chamber of Commerce and you can actually see a list of all LGBTQ owned businesses, which I think is so awesome.
It's fierce.
So you can actually do something to support them. So you can actually seek them out and actually put your dollars in. I haven't looked it up, but I have to now because I would be very interested to see what these companies are and how they are changing the community.
100%.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of discussion right now coming into Pride Month because there are a lot of companies that are really, really interested in profiting on the gay dollar.
Right.
But the rest of the year are maybe not huge supporters of the LGBT community. The LGBTQIA plus community.
I know. Listen, I got to set my game up now. Ron came up in here.
And there are a lot of these companies reaching out to not small in like to say anything about their impact, but like these like creatives who are operating as like a one person sort of consultant or business, and they're saying, "Hey, Pride Month's coming up. We want to do something. What can we do to like to show the gays that we support them for this month?"
Yeah,
and there's a lot to be criticized in that approach.
Oh my God, yes.
I don't think people realize, though. I think people think like, there's a cute, rainbow-colored Pampers diaper, and that means, this company supports queer people. And sometimes that's not always true. You really have to assess where these companies are putting their money and where they're throwing their support.
And how they're treating their employees, what benefits they give their employees, which you actually brought up with Taco Bell. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't even really buy into that, even when it comes to Black History Month. As someone that's African American, that gets me so tight. Like just because everyone comes out full force, companies, TV shows, and they have a fact of the day, and I'm like, we have to move past that and start challenging the status quo and start challenging these companies to hear us all throughout the year.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. What I would like to see is more of us spend time calling out these companies that are going to be like a part of the Pride Parade.
Yeah.
Who aren't supportive of queer people. And there are. There are companies that are registered that do not, in their like very core system of ethics, support queerness. There are companies that are going to be throwing pride parties that will seem like a kiki. They will seem cute. They might even feature some of your favorite drag queen television personalities. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be using their money to support you.
Right.
The money that you pay them to attend this event to support you further down the line. And so that's the sort of stuff that we have to remind people. To your original question of how could we make this more valuable to people? Understand that sometimes those resources that you're putting toward them will wind up being weapons used against you later.
And I guess that's the lesson of just do your research. I do think that we are in a time frame, as much as our political climate is, dare I say, fucked up at this moment. I think it has really awakened people to do more of their research, to be more involved, and just not to just sit and think, oh, everything is great now. We arrived, which I think that is a plus side to it. That people are starting to like move and be active and just do more.
I agree. Yeah. I think that there's like an instinct people have to remove themselves from things that they don't feel are good for them. Yeah. And I actually feel that it's important that we do the opposite.
Right.
If you want to affect change, you can't do it by removing yourself from the system.
Tell them. It's fine, bro.
Sorry.
It's fine.
She's again, that cold. She creeped it up. It's not going to do anyone any. You're not helping your community at all by removing yourself from the systems that you think need reevaluation and change. In fact, you should infiltrate those systems.
Right.
You should infiltrate those systems and affect change from within, because those are the only ways in which we're going to manage. I felt very neglected by queer media. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah, I still do.
And sure, in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, I still feel ignored by queer media. But that doesn't mean that we should run away from queer media.
Right.
Instead, we should be the image that we want to see in queer media. Right?
We should. And I think we should support the queer media that we have, that's been hard for me. There's so many things I don't like, but I'm like, you know what? I got to celebrate it, because unless I celebrate it, there won't be more of it. Does that make sense?
So, like, yes.
Here we go.
So, like, I agree to an extent, but I also feel like it's important that we have... How do I put this? So, there's often content put out that I think if it were put out by a straight person for a straight audience, people would be like, that is terrible. Why is anyone doing that?
Absolutely.
We shouldn't be celebrating content that I don't think like meets the mark. If we're going to represent queer media, we should be doing it in a way that keeps up with everybody else. We shouldn't set the bar lower because it's queer.
But isn't that kind of like, I only think about it like this. Like, you are still there. There might be, and I'm not going to call out any shows specifically, although I want to so bad. But within those shows, people are getting paid. Queer LGBTQIA people are like, whether it be production, cast and crew, like whatever the case may be, they are still like part of the community. And I feel like we should still support them. Now, should you be posting on your Instagram and be like, oh, go watch? Absolutely not. But I do think there should be some type of celebration that it is at least visible.
Sure.
Even if it doesn't seem like it's for us. I do think there should be some celebration, and I just most recently matured to this. Hopefully, I hope there's the maturity. But I was kind of like you, probably just 4 months ago. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But now I feel obligated to like support it, because I feel like without supporting it,
I want an example, only because I'm curious. I'm wondering like.
They're gonna break me down.
Well, there's just so many...
Okay, so for instance, I think Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
That's what I was thinking.
Queer Eye.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Queer Eye. That's the new term. I've been asked about it a lot, and I remember when it first came out this year. I had so many. There are so many. I could name off like 6 straight men who loved the show. They were putting it on the gram and everything. And it wasn't until recently someone articulated it to me. And it was like, it's because they have created that show for Middle America. They have created that show for straight people. They haven't really created it for us. However, I do have this. I want to support Karamo. Like, I want to support these gay figures, these personalities. I definitely would love to like support them, because they just making their bread too. They making their coins, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna I feel like it's personal for me to like personally attack them, but I do think that we should look at you.
No.
I do think we should challenge it though. I will go on record and say I'm not a fan. I think, as much as I was pleasantly surprised by some of the cute like emotional moments, I just think it's so stereotypical, and it hasn't changed that much. Like. No, it doesn't represent me at all by any means. And I think that we are so much further with like recent like media, for instance, like movies like Call Me by Your Name and Moonlight, and like these really like high level productions, to go back and revert to something that seems just so the base level of reality TV, in my opinion, that just seems a bit.
Why is that a bad thing, though? I love the base level of reality TV. It gave us New York. It gave us
Are you
kidding me? Give me an afternoon, a weed pen, and any season of the Bad Girls Club, and I'm a happy camper. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think that we have so much more to overcome, so much more to offer the community that people are not seeing. So I think when we do perpetuate those continuous, especially to Middle America or people who are not familiar with us, that is just the wrong message. Like, we got to lead with that. Can we lead with something a little bit more like challenging than and that I also struggle with that too, because I'm like, I'm a big believer of we should start showing different types of gay, queerness, lesbian. Like, we've seen the same type over and over again. That's not to say that those roles should not be out there as well, but I just think that there's room for everyone to grow, and I just feel like that just is not really doing anything for the culture. I think, in my opinion.
That's fair. Yeah. That's valid. Sorry, not to like dismiss your.
But no shade to y'all, cast. Cast, crew, and production.
If anybody working on a project at that scale was like, "Hey, would you want to be in the reinvented version of the Fab Five?"
Probably was. Yeah. Probably was. They're getting checks.
I'm there.
Yeah.
But that's not. I'm not hating on what they've done. I actually really liked the show, except for one episode. There was one episode where like they pushed a narrative that I thought was like, it just seemed really fabricated.
Are you talking about when they pulled him over?
That was me. I was bothered
because that is because if you know reality TV, you know it was frank. It was set up that way.
Yeah, so that was so produced.
People are being killed. People are being pulled over wrongfully. Like all these things I feel like it kind of makes mockery, but also like that's. But I get what they were trying to do. It was just it was executed all wrong.
But I agree, and I think the Fab Five is great on the show. Like they do really well. I don't know that like I think it's base level reality TV because I think that there's like it's definitely
it wasn't
the
wrong thing to say, but
no, no, I just don't think it was like it's not as trashy as it could have been. It could have been, you know what I mean? Like there could have been a different approach altogether, and that could have been a train wreck.
Yeah,
I thought it was handled thoughtfully. It just there were certain moments where I was like, I don't know that this feels transparent.
Yeah,
we can see what you're doing, and it's not really doing much for the queer community. It's this is here to serve a straight audience who feels unacknowledged. Right? That's fine. If it's bridging the gap between middle Americans and sort of these like metropolitan queers, hey, I'm here for it.
Yeah,
great. That's doing something.
Yeah.
It's not doing nothing. That's bridging that gap is an important one. Right? Letting people feel connected, especially when like city dwellers, like it's sort of there's some value in being a city dweller now. Like it's cool. It's especially a New York City dweller. Like there's something hype about that. And so if this is building a bridge from us to some small town family in Oklahoma that might have...
I can get with that.
Yeah,
I can get with that.
Here for it. Let's do that. There are other examples of queer media that I don't think are as effective or making as big of an impact. And that's the sort of stuff that I think we should maybe reassess and re-examine.
Give me an example.
I think the media in general is really quick to celebrate the narratives of any fit, cis, white, gay.
Yeah.
And there's a narrative there that is... It's not only like we've seen it, it's a little tired.
Yeah.
Like it does... what effect or what change are you trying to affect? It would be I would love what we have in queer media a lot more if casting was done better.
Yeah.
And if people were willing to take more risks.
Yeah.
I think everyone is so invested right now in what's happening on social media, which is great, but they're not interested in the rising stars, which is who they should be interested in. They're interested in the people who have 500,000 followers. Those people are already sort of at the top.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for them to go, so there's no like point A to point B. There's no narrative to follow.
Right.
And that I think is actually a really big issue, because then it's inconsequential.
Yeah.
Right. Like what are they gaining? Right. What's actually happening here, and why am I wasting my time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note. on that
positive note,
on that good old positive note, anyway. We'll have to continue the conversation later on. I want you back on the show.
Let's do it.
You're amazing.
You tell me when and where.
Okay. Well, you tell everyone where they can find you on social media.
Yes.
Tell them, boo.
You can find me on Instagram at Ron Sese, RonSese. Mm-hmm. You can find me also frequently popping up on the Voices 4 page.
Okay.
Which is
at Voices
4 _.
Got it. At Voices _4 _.
Yeah, and if anyone is looking to affect queer or change for the global queer community, please come and join us. We meet every Wednesday at the LGBT Center in New York City from 8 to 10.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh,
come
good.
Through. Come join us. Come start a...
I'm going to be there. I'm coming through. Of course.
Please.
Of course.
And if you want to check out the next BK Queer Flea, make sure that you check us out May 20th and 21st at the Rosemont in Brooklyn. That's 63 Montrose Ave.
Okay.
In Brooklyn. And we're going to be doing some really fierce stuff for this next one. So come get a portrait. Come do some cute stuff.
I'm so excited.
Yes. And hopefully maybe we can even have your presence.
Yes, you will. And guys, make sure you go on to... It is live at this point, www.theprivypodcast.com. I will be announcing some other little contests and things around the website. Also, hit us up on Instagram and Twitter at The Privy Podcast. The Privy would like to thank you again, Ron, for being here.
Of course.
And as always, guys, we'll see you next time. Or you can hear us next time.
Nice to chat with you.